Due to the thematic elements presented in this video, some material may not be suitable for persons under the age of 14. Hello, I hope you are doing well. I want to thank you in advance for your time today, as I believe that time is the most valuable component of our days. I must mention this video may not be absorbed correctly without a certain level of attention towards it. What I mean is, it's not the best video to have on in the background if you are doing something else. Due to the amount of material here, the presentation will be filtered into 5 separate sections, strictly to keep things organized. Feel free to stop in between, as I believe that this material will be quite new to most of you. Before we start, I will offer a bit of backstory, as many times backstories are key to understanding the motivation or perspective behind why a presentation such as this exists. I'd originally begun this presentation as personal notes, just for myself only, to keep material organized that I was prepping for a master's degree. The master's degree was to include a mixing of 2 separate fields, psychology and theology. The subject of discussion was to be the belief system of the 21st century society. The psychology part of the discussion had to do with the constructs of thought, which make up our everyday society, and the theology part had to do with how these mental constructs came into being. Though many would never read an essay of that length for fun, I had begun to realize that those who may not care about psychological theological studies may still find this work very eye-opening. So I decided to make my PowerPoint notes and slides into a video for anyone to view. This is not intended to be an entertainment video or what is known as infotainment either. I will keep the video clips minimal and simply present images to follow along with words. That said, just know that this presentation grew from an organic place. At the end of the day, we all live in the same society together. However, there are certain elements situated in plain sight which not everyone picks up on. I will organize these truths hidden in plain sight, since only seeing individual pieces of the puzzle every day makes it difficult to understand without placing them all together. Once placed together, then one sees the bigger picture. When one mixes the fields of psychology and theology, what comes out is something called duality. When it comes to duality, the greatest example from a psychological scientific perspective is hot versus cold, day versus night. From a theological perspective, duality is good versus evil, or God versus the devil. Essentially, duality is the black and white checkerboard of our reality. When I began noticing the duality built into our lives, it was impossible to miss after a while. I refer to it as going through life either as asleep or awake. Duality's embedded roots make up the society we live. Duality is, in fact, the most prominent part of our perceived reality. To be honest, there is some extremely basic knowledge that exists outside of what is taught to the general public. This knowledge used to be common knowledge in society. However, it has since been occulted. To truly understand the world that you live in, the basic knowledge of etymology, numerology, symbology, and iconology are the keys. Etymology is the study of the origin of words and how their meanings have changed over time. For example, I will point out the word definition to you. The public defines the word definition as the meaning of words. However, the word definition is not that. The word definition is actually 2 root words spliced into one. Definition is actually deaf-phonetian, since the Phoenicians had defined the way that we speak and listen to each other. To be a deaf-phonetian is simply to stop at what the word is defined as in the dictionary. Etymology looks at the phonics of the word and what the word is truly saying. Numerology is the branch of knowledge that deals with the significance of numbers. Math does not lie, but people do. Symbology is the study of symbols, and you see symbols every single day of your life. Lastly, number 4, iconology. Iconology is the key. Iconology mixes all 3 of the previous studies together. Iconology is the study of visual imagery and symbolism within social and political terms. Iconology is basically where we're at right now in this reality. What this all breaks down to is simple. You live in a world surrounded by symbols, numbers, and words. Without knowledge of how these things came to be what they are today, reality itself cannot be understood. Reality is the current psychological pieces of the now, mixed with the theological beginnings from the past. The key is to bridge the gap in order to see hidden truths all around you. The truth of who we really are, what we are doing here, what is actual purpose. All of these truths are hidden right out in the open to be deciphered for anyone who has eyes to see and ears to hear. To be completely forward, you unknowingly live in a carefully calculated, constructed reality themed with duality. If that photo looks like a world that you live in, then this presentation is definitely going to be for you. Let's get started with a quote here from someone we have all heard of, Mr. Einstein. Science without religion is lame, and religion without science is blind. That's funny because it reminded me of another quote from someone who is still alive today, actually. Science and religion are not at odds. Science is simply too young to understand. This is Dan Brown, the author of The Da Vinci Code. When it comes to the question of does life imitate art or does art imitate life, it's a fine line. Here we have the fictional character Robert Langdon, subsequently a professor in a fictional world, discussing the same real-life ideals, which I'll be touching upon shortly myself. The Da Vinci Code was an excellent novel, but it went a bit further than entertainment. While many people spending their energy opposing how the writing depicted Mary Magdalene, the true message of how the world is ran by signs, symbols, and their esoteric meanings went largely unnoticed. Signs and symbols do rule the world, not words nor laws, as Confucius once said. These are the signs and symbols that rule our world and our reality. The key ones are that of the UN logo directly in the middle, interestingly enough having a target over the earth. On a side note, this was too funny not to mention since I know there's been a lot of talk about this topic on the internet lately. The map of the earth on the UN logo is actually the flat earth model. Yes, believe it or not. The UN logo's matrix grid is separated into 33 compartments. 33 is the highest rank of Freemasonry, which is actually related to the logo on the right, which has the letter G on it there. Directly opposite of that is the Skull and Bones 322 logo, which is the name of the society branched out of Yale University, which George Bush was actually a member of himself. Lastly, the symbol at the very top of this graphic, the all-seeing eye. This symbol is of course located on the back of the United States monetary tender, the back of dollar bills. Recognizing these symbols is one thing. Understanding what they are after is another thing. But actually knowing how they relate to each other in terms of connection, that is everything. Here, let's start with some basic ones. These are symbols relating to alchemy, though you probably see a few of them which look familiar, even if you have no clue what alchemy even is. Again, and even moving into Wicca, you'll see some symbols that you recognize, but may not fully understand what they truly mean. Here we have hand symbols. You most likely have seen the majority of these, but many stop at what they simply believe the intended meaning is, without looking further into what they're actually and truly saying. Also, the numerology side of things shown a bit right here. Very key to much of this, but we won't dive into that right now actually. Here we have a snake eating its own tail, encompassing the all-seeing eye inside of the pyramid or prism. This is actually an excellent example of hidden meaning. When you look at that other symbol below, we have the dragon doing the same thing, though the all-seeing eye prism is replaced with the Freemasonic emblem accompanied by the G, replacing the eye. Two different pictures altogether, but you can identify easily that they came from the same origin. Lastly, how about this ensemble of symbols? Or how about the fact that they were quickly flashed on TVs across the nation randomly during a major sporting event a few years back. And yet no one seemed to have an explanation for that. Let's move into some symbols you may use on a daily basis yourself. How about the Apple logo? You are aware that the current Apple logo is. Have you ever seen the original one though, to your left there? In the original logo, it depicts Isaac Newton sitting under a tree reading a book titled A Mind Forever Voyaging Through the Strange Seas of Thought, Alone. Pretty random for Apple's first logo, wouldn't you say? You should also take note of the fact that the tree is bent, and the apple hanging in the tree itself has a light radiating from it in a 360 degree. Most people can start to see where this is going. It's going from the exact place it started, and that is that it's not original whatsoever. It is literally the apple that Eve tempted Adam with. The schema is in regards completely to ancient religious storytelling. For people who live on the surface level and absorb life at face value, this literally passes over people's heads, even though it's always been there in plain sight. The entire concept of biting the apple was that they would begin thinking different than what was naturally intended for them. Thinking different? Eve? Think different? Eve? There it is. The Apple company's digital advert featuring the logo, Think Different. And Eve, aka Steve. And yes, the first Apple computer did in fact sell at $666. To keep things lighthearted though this early, let's just chalk that up as a strange sense of humor in the creative marketing department of a major customer-facing organization. A one-off, but just for the time being. The Nike logo, or symbol, as I have begun to now refer to it as. Nike, yet another massive customer-facing organization, they use the infinite swoosh as their symbol. And while the majority of people spend their time relating to this topic and arguing that is either a check mark or not a check mark, the pearl of great price goes unscathed and largely unnoticed. No, it is not a check mark. And it is not a randomly formulated, non-calculated paintbrush stroke either. It is taken from the infamous ring ensemble of Saturn. So when people hold the symbol or logo in high regard, wish to buy new clothing or shoes with it on it, or watch the biggest athletes in the world push it to the masses, that is actually what is referred to as Saturn worship. For those of you who don't know what Saturn worship is worldwide, but only prominent in some areas openly. However, it is almost entirely confined to certain circles the general public has no idea about. So Apple, Nike, these are just the major ones on the world stage that have been around since the beginning of their respective materialistic category timeframes. There are more and more emerging at a rapid pace. Tesla. I love Tesla vehicles. Many people think Elon Musk is a genius, though some people just look at him as a frontman or a face of the organization. More or less just a likable, relatable, glorified spokesperson playing the part, but that's irrelevant, so let's get back to the logo at hand. The Tesla logo is a sharp-edged T-shape appearing symbol. However, it is resembling to the subconscious that of the infamous Baphomet logo. While your conscious makes the connection between the symbol and the letter T, your subconscious, like the infinite speed data decoder that it sincerely is, will connect this other famous Baphomet logos, and others will be connected that you come across every day unknowingly. Baphomet is a mythical creature that is greatly regarded upon within certain circles. Elite circles, I will call it for now. As mentioned, duality plays the biggest part on our world stage, and Baphomet is the perfect mascot for that. Baphomet is both animal and human, both male and female, both light and dark, both up and down as well, as it is seen always doing the infamous as above so below pose. As we leave the materialistic world that the general public is so in tune to for a moment, we see where the infamous medical logo symbol is derived from. Its origin is literally right in front of you at the moment. Many other billion-dollar, top-of-the-pyramid organizations have incorporated Baphomet as well. Some personify it further though, such as Procter & Gamble. See the two horns? There's also the inverted 666 coded in plain sight as well. There's a reason why there's strictly 13 stars incorporated too. There's plenty of room for others and even much more creatively accordingly, but no, 13 stars to be exact. There are no accidents when it comes to esoteric meaning. Things either are or are not. There are no half-truths mixed with half-lies. They are what they are, and this logo is what it is. It's truly not complicated. Starbucks. Starbucks took the whole world by storm, especially after the general public saw so many of their favorite idols carrying a Starbucks cup around in their hands during photo ops. Of course, then the remaining masses jump on the Starbucks train, too, simply because they see it in their hands of so many of the colleagues now. Things don't trend and spread like wildfire that easy. Many trends are not trending whatsoever. They're created to trend. Starbucks was initially one of them. Back to what the logo is showing, in plain sight as always. Baphomet's logo worn on the actual uniforms of upper-end Freemasons, such as a Grand Sovereign Master, is that of the two circles, one within the other, and two stars corresponding. Then, within all that, is the symbol that means Baphomet. The Starbucks logo is literally that. The only playfulness to the masses that this multi-million-dollar organization used is it tricks you with a mermaid. That mermaid is a complete joke. Take a look at what that mermaid looked like originally. Upside down so that hidden in plain sight is easy. I won't utilize much more time breaking this down for you, but of course, rest assured, Baphomet is prominent in many logos that the general public has no idea about. Your mind's eye should easily be able to identify the connecting dots and amalgamate that connection itself. There's only a slight rotation of a select few concepts hidden within our reality's most popular symbols. When there's no Baphomet, there's usually the prism. Take a look at how many times the prism is planted in plain sight, though. It goes not only unrealized often, but consciously unconnected to how many times you see it in other conglomerate symbols as well. Baphomet, Saturn, prism, these are visually tangible objects. These being shown now, however, incorporate hidden numeracy. AMA's numerical sixes, right there. Of course, the trilateral commissions as well. I mean, Lucius Trust, located just offside of the center there, should be a given. Lucius Trust was founded in the 1920s and was originally titled Lucifer's Trust. Obviously, they incorporate their 666 reference just like Google Chrome's infamous logo. Most look at that multiple times a day as well, but never see it. The funny part though, with the Google Chrome emblem, is actually the blue coloration in the middle, surrounded by the white border, which I'll actually touch upon later. Lastly, the Gmail logo is literally just the infamous Masonic apron. And to top it off, the highest rank in the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry is the 33 degree. Hence, the Gmail logo incorporated not only the Masonic apron, but the number 3 is extremely prominent as well. So yes, if something comes from the top of the top, the largest organizations in our reality at the top of that financial pyramid, one would be smart to assume elites share the same circles. In fact, it would be most peculiar if they didn't. Masonry is no higher honor for these individuals. The quote-unquote creativity behind their emblems is sort of a business card obsession for them, a members-only type reference few are to understand. These are the most current relevant examples I found pertaining to the Masonic emblem of the snake eating its own tail. If you were to ask, how can so many people go for the same concept? That's the illusion in itself. It's not all these people, it's a select few who own all the others. Hopefully this chart fills that void in for question. Alright, here's a prime example of how symbolic nature is hidden easily in plain sight. Take a look at the word woman on the left. It is extremely simple to place things in plain sight, as you can see. Your subconscious will decode it, but the conscious, unfortunately, isn't that lucky. I bet you guys didn't know what Uncle Sam was either. American money is one of my favorite truths in plain sight to break down. This chart does a better example of that than I wish to, so pause and take a quick look if you like. And no, marketing departments did not come up with that what to draw on the monetary tender. Everything has a meaning. Corporations run nations, and this is an illustrative of your world, aka your reality. I won't be reading this off individually, but feel free to obviously pause again and take a look at that chart. To the right, we have the hierarchy pyramid of the York Rite and Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. The rest of this pyramid is simply the system within itself. I need to make this apparent, though, that I never use the ridiculous term Illuminati. The Illuminati is a real group, though, founded by Adam Weishaupt on May 1st, 1776 in Ischlau, Germany. Again, not what the youth of today thinks it is. They've been watching quite a lot of TV and movies, I will leave it at that. Illuminati embodies the concept of the enlightened ones, and it is truly the attention diverter of Freemasonry. Freemasonry was the offshoot of the Knights Templar. Don't forget, guys, those who win the battles get to write the textbooks at the end of the day. Before money was power, knowledge was power. It is ignorant and uneducated to think that when the concept of the monetary system expanded, that the elites who had ruled for centuries all of a sudden said, okay, here's all that knowledge that we've had in our bloodline for years. You peasants can now have it and do what you like with it. We're simply content with the riches of money. That did not happen and would never happen. For example, let me relate to knowledge no better way than incorporating education itself. Why do you wear a black gown and a flat-capped hat with a string bent 90 degrees upon graduation? This is the black robe from the god of Saturn. Again, Saturn worship. That cap was referred to as squaring the circle, a major concept of the outliers of Masonry, and in fact, the cap itself you wear is the Freemasonic motorboard. Again, Saturn worship is what has been for centuries. It is Satan worship. Saturn is the early Latin derivative of Satan. Saturn is Satan. Remember Sega Saturn or GameCube? Emphasis on the cube or square, or what has been illustrated many times, a cell or hell. Without going into a 3-hour presentation on syntax, do you know why the most common words have hell in their etymology? Hell-o. How can I help you today? How is your health? They even made the most significant part of us out of this concept. Your DNA is made up of a double helix or helix. This will make much sense later, but let me finish off this first chapter here. In the world of duality, those who control it control us without you consciously realizing. Of course, they're the other side of the checkboard. They worship God, the god of Saturn, therefore they worship Satan. They've been doing it since time immemorial, and they are well aware of what they do, and that it's a lot easier if you're not aware yourself. To be honest, to perform a satanic ritual, you don't have to believe in it at all. You don't even have to know you're doing it. The only thing required for a ritual is the attention of the person involved. Have you ever seen certain Super Bowl halftime performances with fire, brimstone, and even Baphomet-like horned costumes all around? Yes, of course you have. And when you say that the Super Bowl is one of the days that the majority of the population is focusing their intent on watching the game, yes it is. These people run our world, and therefore they create your reality. Is the name George Washington familiar to you? This is not an illustrative depiction here. This is real. This is an actual statue. He is literally posing as Baphomet for all the general public to take photos with, placed in plain sight again, for all to see. Deceiving is not lying. They are allowed to deceive. They look at it as, if you do not have the eyes to see and ears to hear and brain to think for yourself, then you don't deserve to know the truth. You then become a living, walking, repeating carbon copy of someone or something else. You are literally their minions. Do you notice the ridiculous amount of minion cartoon items that are placed everywhere these days? That has basically been as far as it has gone. Simply look up the definition itself. The younger generation is growing up to believe minions is a name and not a word. They're coming out with it now. These statues have been erected in the United States. For those who control this reality, I will say, they no longer have the need to hide anything, hide agendas at this point in the timeline. There's literally a battle between good and evil right out in the open, but the societal masses are not awake to that yet. This is by design. You cannot win a game you don't even know you're in, and that's it. Thank you so much for viewing Chapter 1, Part 1 of 5. This information is honestly not even the tip of the iceberg. There's a worldwide wake-up occurring.